Paul O'Sullivan hits the Zuma family again. This is after it is alleged that Paul O'Sullivan, together with his associate, are the ones who opened a case against Duduzile Zuma, and are the ones who are actually the champions of this current litigation against Duduzile. In this video, I wanted us to look into these allegations and have a clear understanding as to why is O'Sullivan tangled and intertwined with the Zuma family, because they have a whole long history. So this matter started around the time of the Guptas during the former President Jacob Zuma's tenure. So this whole thing started with the IP'd as well as O'Sullivan. So we know that O'Sullivan claims, or he says, that he's the private forensic investigator, and he says that he's a person that is anti-corruption. So as he's a person that is anti-corruption, he always says that he always investigates corruption. And he even recently claimed that he knows that Mkhwanazi is corrupt, Masemola is corrupt, Kumalo is corrupt. He's just the man that you can say he's on the wrong side of things, because he's not on the side of Mkhwanazi, whom everybody is on his side. He seems like he's leaning more towards the side of Shadrack Sibiya, as implicated, so much so in all these proceedings that are going on with the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee. So what happened is that O'Sullivan was investigating the Guptas and the involvement of Jacob Zuma around 2017-16, around those times. And what happened is that while he was investigating, he was also pushing the campaign to remove Jacob Zuma as the president. However, at that time, the head of the Hawks, who is Prince Mukotedi, he came and lodged a criminal complaint / affidavit. He lodged that, saying that O'Sullivan says he has some damning information that is criminally incriminating against Duduzile Zuma, who is the twin of Duduzile Zuma. So that is when this whole thing started, and that in that affidavit it was said that Paul O'Sullivan is actually having a campaign against Jacob Zuma to remove him, and is turning the community against Malala, which is Jacob Zuma. And the end goal of this whole thing is for Jacob Zuma to leave office and to quit as the president of South Africa. This was then met and led by his arrest. And when he was arrested, he said that this was a form of silencing him. This was a thing that was made to make him to not continue investigating the corruption that involves Jacob Zuma, his family, and the Guptas. So they had this information about Duduzile Zuma, his links to the Guptas. I don't know if you guys remember those times when Duduzile Zuma was trending. Oh, Babaga Duduzile this. There were pictures and a lot of videos that showed Duduzile Zuma intermingling himself with the Guptas. Then comes an organization called the Undoing Tax Abuse. They laid charges of treason and racketeering against Duduzile Zuma and the Gupta brothers around the 2017s. And when that happened, I'm assuming that O'Sullivan was happy that, oh, I got them where they don't have, where they are weak. Because remember that these organizations are being funded by people like O'Sullivan. So they succumb to the funders' demands and the funders' wishes, which at that time O'Sullivan was at the Zumas. Every one of them, not just Jacob Zuma, but even the children of Jacob Zuma, because he was attacking Duduzile Zuma, which then leads us to the unrest. So before we can get to the unrest and Duduzile Zuma's case, what happened is that in between, there was that case of them trying to get Jacob Zuma arrested. And guess who is at the center of that? Helen Suzman Foundation. So Helen Suzman Foundation didn't want Jacob Zuma and was actually investigating the Guptas and Jacob Zuma, and they wanted to send him straight to prison, to a point that they haven't had such interviews.
We welcome the judgment. It is very clear that private prosecutions of the type attempted by former President Jacob Zuma here in these cases constitute an abuse of court process, that they were brought for ulterior purpose. In the case against prosecutor Billy Dana, in order to prevent him from undertaking his duties as a prosecutor fearlessly and independently, in order to secure delay of the criminal charges and criminal prosecution that has been brought by the National Prosecuting Authority that Mr. Zuma faces, And in Ms. Maughan's case, brought for the ulterior purpose of seeking to intimidate and harass her in doing her job, which is reporting fearlessly on the charges and the prosecutions against former President Zuma. And we think that it is an important precedent, a clear recognition that private prosecutions of this type constitute an abusive process. I think it's important to underline that our interest in this case was not only in respect of the particular parties, but concern for private prosecutions being brought against different actors that are absolutely essential to upholding our democracy, whether they be independent journalists, whether they be members of civil society, whether they be members of the political opposition. If you have private prosecutions of this type, they have a chilling and compromising effect on our democracy.
So they wanted him gone. He was a threat. He was a problem because they felt like he is corrupt. So to those who don't know, what is the Helen Suzman Foundation? The Helen Suzman Foundation is a non-profit organization. It was established around in 1993, and it was named after Helen Suzman, was one of the anti-apartheid activists at that time. And they are there. Their purpose is to ensure that organizations such as IPED as well as Chapter 9 institutions remain independent. So the Chapter 9 bodies such as the Public Protector, the Human Rights Commission, so those are the Chapter 9 institutions or bodies that they claim that they want to see being independent. They are also saying that they're the champions of the rule of law. They want accountability. They pride themselves in litigation, research, and advocacy. You can say that they're similar to AfriForum and also Solidarity, kind of. But more of them, they're not really race-based in a way. They say that they are, protecting everyone's rights, and they want the courts, the judiciary, and stuff like that to remain independent of the influence of the executive or politicians. So they also demand that, it is said that they also one of the people that are investigating the corruption that is happening in South Africa. So that is one of their roles when it comes to this whole thing that is happening currently in South Africa. They are a watchdog. Or you can say they are a democratic guardian. So they were playing a very big role when it comes to criticizing Zuma and the Guptas. And they were one of the people that were in the forefront to fight this thing. And guess what? Before I can drop the bombshell, let me play this video.
By the Sheriff of the High Court to testify before the Commission of Inquiry, interstate capture, in addition to being jailed for contempt of court. For more on this, I'm joined now by legal counsel at the Helen Suzman Foundation, Anton van Dalsen. Anton, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight on the Newsfeed Late Night. So, your argument is the former president, should not only be jailed, but should be dragged kicking and screaming to come and testify at the commission by the Sheriff of the High Court. I mean, what is the rationale behind that thinking? Is the offense such a severe offense that you feel is compulsory not only to jail him, but to drag him to the commission?
So as you guys have heard from this video, they wanted Zuma inside Pakati the prison for him to sing Hosh, for him to sing Plungi Jail. They wanted him to sing Liplungi Jail. That's what they wanted him to do. However, when they saw that that didn't work because he got presidential pardon, they then looked for something else to attack Jacob Zuma on. And guess what? Who's the funder? None other than O'Sullivan, because he said it himself that is funding the Helen Suzman Foundation.
I then went to Helen Suzman Foundation, and I funded the Helen Suzman Foundation with a substantial amount of money to bring an application to have Robert McBride's suspension overturned, and he was reinstated back at IPED. Now, in addition to putting money in myself, I canvassed donations from other business people that I knew that were comfortable or well off. And together we pulled enough money to bring the necessary court applications, and McBride got his job back. The week after he got his job back, I met with him at IPED, and I said, come, we've got a corrupt chief of police now. What are you going to do about it? And he appointed a task team, and they got on with it and dealt with it. And what I did in the first few weeks of that task team's activities, I sat with them on a regular basis and gradually handed over all the evidence that I had gathered over the previous year in order to leapfrog them into the position where they were then able to go after Pashlani. And Pashlani, as you know, was arrested and charged with corruption and is still on trial now. I think he's facing at least 400 or 500 million rands worth of corruption charges. And that was Paul O'Sullivan, by the way, that put all that together with IPID. Of course, I put it together and gave it to IPID. I don't have a power of arrest. I can't go knocking on Pashlani's door and arrest him. IPID had to take that over. I couldn't take that to DPCI because DPCI was owned. The whole of the criminal justice system had been captured. So what did I do? In 2019, or between 2018, after I beat all these fake charges they brought against me to shut me up.
So now, with O'Sullivan actually funding these people, this Helen Suzman wanted Jacob Zuma down. They're claiming that they are investigating anti-corruption to a point that they were against the removal of McBride when his contract was not renewed at IPID because he was IPID head. And his contract was not renewed by Bheki Cele, who is the Minister of Police, and they said that that was the interference, and that the Minister of Police actually not renewing the contract of McBride was the interference of the executive on the independence of IPID. And this man, this McBride person, is one of the people that were actually very, very forefronted and, you know, very much anti-Guptas and the Zumas and everything. He wanted the Zumas and the Guptas to be punished, this McBride person. So Helen Suzman, as well as O'Sullivan and the likes, they felt like this man is being targeted specifically because of him being against the Zuma family.
The commission, to assist the commission, is to express my own personal experiences as executive director of IPID, what I observed and what evidence brought to light, and a number of litigations, court cases, judgments have indicated and led me to firmly believe that there was an attack on anti-corruption institutions, and that my suspension on the 25th of March 2015 was part of that process to take control of independent anti-corruption bodies and remove their heads by suspension, spurious disciplinaries, and then to supplant them with compliant people who wouldn't carry out their task diligently.
Now moving right along to the Duduzile Zuma case. So Duduzile Zuma comes at July unrest when Jacob Zuma was arrested. Then Duduzile just tweets and says, "We see you." This was not interpreted the same by everybody. People like O'Sullivan and an associate called Sarah Jane Thrant felt threatened, felt like, no, this is incitement of violence. So who is Sarah Jane Thrant? She's the executive director of the Forensic for Justice, which is owned by O'Sullivan. And they felt like that post was part of the broader coordinated incitement of violence linked to destabilization and political mobilization. And this lady, this Sarah, feels like she's one of these attorneys that are anti-corruption. So she's smart. That is why she's an associate of O'Sullivan. She feels like she's an attorney that is anti-corruption, that fights corruption. However, she got arrested. The same way that O'Sullivan got arrested, she also got arrested. With O'Sullivan, when he got arrested, it was the issue, I think it was in concerns with the visa. I'll put the article here, guys, so that you guys can see the charges that he was faced with. Now we see this lady also being arrested, and he got out of bail for 5,000 rands. And obviously, they used the same card as O'Sullivan, that she's been attacked or she's been targeted because she's investigating the Guptas and the Zumas and everything, and she's anti the corruption. However, when I found out, she was arrested because she was impersonating an IPID person trying to investigate the National Police Commissioner at that time, which was Khomotso Phahlane. That is what this lady was doing. And during the State Capture Commission, one of the people testified and said that, and raised the question of independence and role confusion, that O'Sullivan and this Trent lady, either they were influenced by IPID or private actors for them to act the way they did, and also impersonating IPID people for them to get the information that will bring the Zumas down. So now with this case of Duduzile, it's a thing that goes way down long ago that O'Sullivan and his associate, including the organization, the NGO that is funding, are trying to bring the ZUMAS down. So they're using all of these resources, including the state capture, the Zondo Commission, to bring the Zuma down, but they failed in all these attempts. Hence, they used that Twitter to specifically target Duduzile Zuma. So it is not just the fight of Jacob Zuma, but it's the fight of the Zumas versus O'Sullivan. O'Sullivan, I don't know if he wanted his revenge or what he wanted, but clearly he's fighting the Zumas. And with this, he felt like, this is an easy win. However, you need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that a person committed a crime. Let us talk about the prospects of success with the Duduzile Zuma case. What are the prospects of success? I don't know if a tweet that says we see you is enough for you to say that I incited violence. We see you. You are doing whatever that you're doing. Did she really mean that she sees the protest that was going on? Or she was just seeing what was going on in the country at that time? There was even a lockdown at that time. Could it be that she really meant that we see you and she was inciting violence? Hence, I kind of agree with this Gizwe Mchunu person that I feel like to a certain degree, the prosecutor's case is very weak. However, let us see what is going to happen because the proceedings are still ongoing. She's going through her trial. But let's see what is the evidence of the NPA because I'm hoping this is not the waste of state resources and the waste of South Africans' time. They know what they're doing because here we see this is clearly political. These people have their own rivalries that date back to the time of the Guptas. Clearly, O'Sullivan just wanted to attack Jacob Zuma. But with the current stance that he took about Shadrack Sibiya, Mkhwanazi, Van Masemula, makes you really question his character as O'Sullivan, if whether he's someone that you can believe in, if whether his cause is justified or not. Because really, right now, I just have a lot of questions, especially considering the fact that it's O'Sullivan that is involved. He's actually the one together with that attorney called Sarah that actually went and opened a case against Duduzile Zuma after they have this history with the Zumas. Know what you guys think? Please comment your thoughts. Otherwise, I will see you on my next upload. Bye.